You see that as well?
Yeah.
We are now live after a failed first attempt. Welcome to the Brad Bodnerchuk podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to have on the show today, Derek Juno. Welcome, bud.
Thank you for having me, Brad.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. This has been a conversation that I have been motivated to have for quite some time, and I haven't shared this with you yet. And to give the listeners and the viewers a bit of a background, Derek and I have been uh, kind of chatting in the background through Instagram for a few months, and finally, obviously, we're here doing this podcast. But your name was brought up to me years ago. I'll say it like 2 years ago, um,
Oh, really?
by a group of people. Yeah, by a group of people that I was sitting down with through an initiative that I had started just before I left BC, which I called the Half a Dozen Dinner Series. And this was a dinner
Okay.
series that saw me featuring a local chef, a local farm, then a local food-based charity was getting all the profits from the dinner. So we did like long table dinners on farms in Abbotsford. We did dinners in East Vancouver. But I had people always come up to me and say, like, "Hey, you should really talk to this Derek guy at Mealshare. You should really have him on the podcast,
He
and you should
loves
talk to
eating
him."
food.
Yeah, but I think there was they had seen perhaps some synergies between the charitable side of what I was doing and obviously what Mealshare is and has been. So before I
Yeah.
get too long winded on my on my story, I just thought it was unique to the fact that you've been on my radar now for some time, and now I'm lucky enough and blessed enough to have you here. So for those that
Yeah.
don't know who you are and don't know, and we'll just jump right into it, what Mealshare is, uh, let us know who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Okay. Um, I'm trying to live an extraordinary life that's impactful, grateful, fulfilling, and that ultimately inspires others to do the same. And so I've been trying to focus on this mission for the last since 2012. In 2012, I took a 4 month trip to Southeast Asia that turned into a year and a half trip around the world, as they sometimes do. And on this trip, I like started my journey on personal development and reflection. Basically, I'm an extreme extrovert, like extreme. I love extroverting all over people, and so for me, I'd never taken time to just like be with myself. If I ever had extra time growing up, I'd always just spend it with friends, spend it with other people, and just surround myself with other people because that's what made me happy. That's what gave me energy. And so it was during this trip in Southeast Asia where I had like these 16, 17-hour long bus rides where I had nothing. I had no phone, no distractions. And that was the ultimate thing that I like realized that was important. I had no distractions. I was basically on a seat by myself, couldn't speak the language. And those were some like amazing experiences. Like I really didn't look forward to them, but once I went through that process, I was like, this is great. I should be doing this more often. Like how often do you have the time to ask yourself like really big questions? Do I believe in God? Why am I here? Like all these massive, massive questions. I'd never really taken the time to like ask myself. And so I was reading a couple different books, personal development books at the time, and that like gave me this inspiration to like take time and just sit with it and try and figure it out. And so since then, I've been, on this journey of really trying to connect the way in which I make money to the way in which I give back, have an impact. So if I can connect impact, the way in which I make money, that's a beautiful thing. The more impact I have, the more money I make. The more money I make, the more impact I have. Like I just love that concept. And so social entrepreneurship was kind of popping off. That was like the buzzword at the time in 2013, 2014 when I came back. And so I actually was in Cambodia teaching English, which is hilarious in and of itself, because if you know me, that is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard because I'm severely dyslexic. So me teaching young children English is like the worst idea. But I did it and I had a blast, and there's probably a lot of kids there confused with D's and B's over in Cambodia, but it was a great time. It was also a tough time, like a depressing time. I'd done a bunch of humanitarian work in my teens, thankfully, that created a lot of gratitude in me, and built some houses in Mexico, and went down to some like very, very poor communities And so when I was over there teaching English and supporting this orphanage and school, I just started asking myself some more big questions around impact. Like, what can I do to give back? Like, I've been so privileged with everything growing up. Being a privileged white male, I want to give back. I want to do something. How can I make my life of service? And so it was around this time that my friend Andrew Hall called me up, and he pitched me this idea. I'll never forget it. I was on Skype with him just talking in this like little one room shack, and he pitched me this idea that was just so simple, yet so impactful. It just blew me away. And that was Mealshare. So essentially, if you've never heard of Mealshare in its simplest form is a giving program for restaurants. We put our little Mealshare logo beside a few menu items on a restaurant's menu. And if you, a conscious consumer, were to order one of these Mealshare branded menu items, you'd be getting your meal just like normal, but you're also providing another meal to a youth in need. So buy a meal, give a meal, no extra action on your part, no extra cost on your part, just that simple. And so Andrew and Jeremy is Andrew's cousin, and they were talking about this idea, and they've been like discussing it for a couple months now. And it was just one of those ideas that just wouldn't go away. And both of them were working for big four consulting firms, just working their butts off. And, you know, they saw their life just stretched out in front of them. Like we're right now devoting our life. We're trading all of our life, all of our time, all of our waking hours to make rich people richer. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, we make money too, but is this fulfilling? And so after a couple of years of that, they said, you know, we want to do something to give back. And so that came to them talking about Mealshare. They pitched me the idea. I was like, that's amazing, guys. Like, I love that. That's fantastic. I've got extra time. If you want to shoot me ideas, I'm more than happy to help. When I'm not teaching kids backwards English, let me know. Let me know how I can help. And so about 6 or 7 months later, when I came home in June of 2013. And they knew that I was looking at jumping into a job, but I was going to take the summer off. So they said, you know, we are just so smoking busy right now. We're working on normal jobs and trying to do Mealshare in the evenings. We need a loud, energetic, obnoxious individual to go knock on restaurants and go talk to them about this concept we've created, mm-hmm. see if we can get some restaurant partners. And I was like, man, I would love to help. And so started chatting with restaurants in Victoria and Vancouver, and it's kind of history from there. We set goals for 1 year. We said, if we can get to these goals in 1 year, we'll do another year. And it's 8.5 years later. We just keep hitting those goals, and things keep going well. And we've provided about 4 million meals to kids in need, and we just set up a big national partnership with A&W. So things are going really well.
Yeah, I feel like this interview is hot. This is like a hot interview right now. I feel like you should be talking to all the other major media outlets, not some dude in Nova Scotia with a microphone.
I was actually just on an interview 3 days ago with CBC in Nova Scotia, which is funny. So
okay.
I just did that, so we're hitting the Nova Scotia scene right now.
Nice.
It's a week for Nova Scotia.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I just saw a friend of mine an acquaintance of mine that I follow. She's in New Brunswick, and she was posting on her story about her and her husband going to A&W and this Mealshare program. And I just thought that, I think that's why you're doing it, is like, at least my interpretation of it as an outsider looking in is people that can afford to. That's what I always say, is like, if we want to affect change, the people that can really impact are the ones that need to be moving and making the change. So if you can afford to spend 100%. An extra $1 or whatever it is, just, do it. And it's great that you guys have provided this kind of no nonsense way of giving back. It's just like, it's really straightforward. And I think it's so great. Can you help me and the listeners understand though what the back end actually looks like? Because that's one thing that I was really, really stringent on when it came to myself aligning with charities that I was going to be giving and donating money to on behalf of everyone that attended the dinners. But I'm always intrigued with charities. Like, where does the money go? Like, what is it actually doing? When I give you $1, where does that dollar go? Is it straight into the kids' mouths, or is it 70 cents for marketing and 20 cents goes to staffing and then 10 cents is so what is, and obviously this is a general sweeping question because you have many charitable partners, but do you guys have boxes that have to be ticked for someone to qualify as an appropriate receiving charity for the Mealshare program?
Yeah, so two questions there. I'll answer the first one. How does it work on the back end? Back end is really, really simple. So every single time a restaurant sells a Mealshare branded menu item, they donate $1 to our organization so that we can provide a meal, not ourselves, but through our partner charities. So we have at least one local charity partner in every single community that we're in. And now with A&W, that means that we've had to set up about 430 new ones this last year because they have a location in almost every community in Canada, which is amazing. So we've got a very large network of charity partners that are actively fighting youth hunger in their community locally. And so the meals, about 80% of the financial contribution stays local because local meals cost more. And then we have our international charity partner, which is Save the Children Canada. So then we provide meals through Save as well. So it's about 80% stay local and 20% going internationally. So that's how it is broken down.
And then how do you,
as far as percentage.
Right. And then how do you and your team pick who? I'm sure this past year you guys were kind of just,
question.
Yeah, but I'm sure you guys were kind of like, oh my God, we need so many more partners. So like if you need money, like please let us help you. But do you still have kind of a stringent standard that needs to be met for you guys to like, yeah, you guys qualify, or no, sorry, you guys don't?
Yeah, so I'll answer this maybe further through the interview, but talking about why we focus on youth hunger specifically, because it's a much bigger problem than I think people realize in Canada. But as far as charities go, we are looking for organizations that have a meal program specifically. So a meal program usually focused on youth and children. That's what we're looking for in a best case scenario. But as we've seen, and in most times as we've grown Mealshare the last 8 years, that hasn't been a problem because we've launched the program in major cities. In major cities, there's a lot of charity options. So when we do our scoping exercise, we get to interview all these different charities and learn all about them, look at their financials, see how impactful and efficient they are, and then decide what we feel is the best choice for our restaurant partners. Another thing we look for is volunteering opportunities, because when we started Mealshare, we realized that there was a bit of a disconnect when it comes to charities. Like people would donate to charities and be like, okay, I hope I've done some good. I hope that did good because I want to feel good and I hope that did it. And we think that there's a bit of a disconnect there. We think a lot of charities can do a lot better as far as showing the impact and connecting your donors to the impact. And so when we talk to restaurants at the beginning, I would call it the gift card black hole, because I would talk to restaurants of how they gave back, and they're like, oh, we give like hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars every year in gift cards to anyone who asks for we have our own email address for that. Like it takes up so much time, energy, but like we want to give back, so that's what we do. And we hope it does some good. And that's what I kept hearing. It's like, we hope it's doing some good. And I was just like, we need to change this. Like, we need to make sure that our partners that join Mealshare are like, we love Mealshare because we know it does good. Like, we are proud of what we're doing with our partner Mealshare. And so we're looking for charity partners that have volunteer opportunities so that we can bring the restaurant staff and our main contacts at the restaurant into the local charity so they can actually make the meals that they're providing and give it to the kiddos. Because that's completely different when you've had a server go into Breakfast Club and see the actual kids that they're providing the meals to, or go into Boys and Girls Club of South Coast BC in one of their clubhouses and play dodgeball with the kids, and then make them, and then give out the meal afterwards. Like that is impactful, and I think that's what restaurants want because their staff feel more connected to it, and so do they. And so that is also something we really look for with charity partners. So that's a big mix. It was interesting going into new communities that are smaller because we went to some communities that have only a couple hundred people, and we'd be looking for charity partners there. And so now it's been really nice because we've been able to expand our horizons. We can bring on food banks, for example. So there are some communities that don't have a charity that specifically supports children and youth with food. And so we're like, okay, let's think strategically here. Like, how can we still have an impact in this community, but maybe it's not specifically just on kids? So we created a really cool little innovation to Mealshare for the A&W partnership, which means that we are going to provide an international meal first. So that promise of one meal purchased, one meal given is solidified and done, confirmed. And then the rest of the financial contribution is going to go towards this local food bank to provide meals to families. So they don't have a per meal cost, which is what we usually look for when we talk to our charity partners, but it still allows us to have that local impact, which A&W is really, really focused on, which we thought was great.
Yeah, so cool. And we can unpack the A&W thing some more, because it's really interesting to have a massive company like that. Obviously you understand them far better now than I would, but to have them really investing in such a like motivating and encouraging platform like this, it's so socially responsible. And I think
I'm just sorry, go for it.
No, I was gonna say I'm really proud of a brand like that. I'm not an A&W user myself, but it definitely makes me consider them more than I would otherwise.
Man, me too. And like obviously me too. But like working with their team, I've just been so amazed at one, how like professional they are, but two, how dedicated they are. I think it's so easy for large companies to be like, oh yeah, we've got like this much money in our charity budget this year. Like, let's sprinkle it around and like do some good. And maybe the individuals around that get so like, this is my job. They're worried about efficiency and like doing the job well, that they potentially don't look at like the impact side and like the big picture sometimes. But like A&W has just blown us away with the whole, how much they care. Like they just talking with their team about like how much they care and how much they're investing in this partnership. This isn't just wanting to get some good marketing. Like their team really, really cares about this issue and thinks that they can make a big impact on it. So they're very excited about it, and they can. So yeah, I'm so proud and so excited that we're working with such an amazing organization.
Pardon my ignorance, but is A&W operating in the US as well, or is it only Canada?
Not many people know this, Brad. Let me take you on a little journey here.
Yeah, please do.
A&W started in the States, and then there was the distribution was purchased, not distribution, I can't think of the word, the rights. The rights were purchased to start the company in Canada. And then I think it was like in the 90s or the late 80s, A&W Canada just like started skyrocketing. And so A&W does exist in the States. It's quite small in comparison, but A&W Canada is a Canadian-owned company. And it's actually the largest Canadian-owned fast food company, which is really cool.
Oh, wow. There you go. So supporting local, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah.
One thing that I think is really important that you just mentioned not too long ago was like context and story. And I think that's something that is so important for everyone to understand with issues like this. And before I put too long of a tail on this kite, there are so many global issues and local issues that deserve our attention. Let's just say that first and foremost. But I think this one that you guys are attacking is so crucial and really does deserve all the red carpet and all the limelight, because when our youth are unable to access food, it's just like it's tragic. And I would love for you to give the listeners a better understanding of what that reality is in our country, because like you said, I think there is a bit of I don't want to say ignorance, because that's a little bit dramatic, but for lack of a better term, ignorance around the systemic issues we have in our country, which is a very, affluent, overall well-doing on the surface country. But there are a lot of communities and families within those communities that really suffer to make ends meet. And one of the things that they sacrifice a lot of the times, and I saw it a bunch in Vancouver, is food, because of things like cost of living is so high. And when someone has to make a choice between, chicken thighs or hydro bill, the reality is probably the hydro bill.
What's going to win out.
Yeah. So can you through your experience just give myself and listeners a better understanding of where we are currently at as far as children and their access to food?
Yeah. That is something that we've been really trying to do the last 8 years, because we were shocked. Like we were shocked getting into this world and learning about it. And we're like, how is this possible for one? And how does not everyone know about this and is talking about this? This is crazy. Because I think unless you're a principal or a teacher, you probably aren't going to see this issue or a parent experiencing it. And if that's the case, you probably don't want to talk about it, to be completely honest. And so the situation in Canada is that Canada is the only G7 country that doesn't have a national school feeding program. That has meant that different communities, different schools, school boards, charities, it's a large mixture of different organizations that it falls to make sure that children receive breakfast if they're not getting it, receive lunch if they're not getting it. Whereas in most other countries, that's like, well, let's take care of this because this is important. And so they do. And so that blew me away to realize that and think, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I didn't have that access growing up in my school like that. But luckily I was very privileged. I didn't necessarily like need it. The stat that we always talk about from the last statistical analysis in Canada says it's 1 in 5. 1 in 5 kids are food insecure in Canada, which is insane by itself. But that statistic is out of date. And especially because of COVID, we know it's way worse. Like some of our charity partners like Breakfast Club are saying it's up to 1 in 3 right now in Canada, which is insane. That like should not happen in Canada. For, as you said, as rich and developed as a country as it is, that just shouldn't happen. And so we think that if we can galvanize the hospitality industry to come together and do something really, really simple, something really, really, really simple, you know, it's a drop in the bucket, but if you get enough drops in a bucket, you can fill that bucket. And that's what we're really trying to do. And so now we're starting to see scale. When we started Mealshare, like this is an awful business model, like just an awful idea. If we have like 10 or 12 restaurants, this just is so inefficient, it does not work. But once we get to scale, you know, this is starting to have a real big impact, the impact that we're really exciting to see. And that's why we started this. And so that's where we're starting to get to now. We've got about 1,200 restaurants now across Canada and having a really big impact on this issue in communities all across Canada because, yeah, it's a much bigger issue than people realize.
Do you find that, and this just came to me when you're talking, now that we're changing speeds a little bit, when you say hospitality industry, because that's such a broad stroking statement and it includes so many different versions and concepts. Sure. Do you foresee the alignment with A&W being a, for lack of a better term, issue with then, you know, aligning yourself with those sole proprietor, you know,
independent restaurant,
hip restaurant, independent restaurants that are a little more like hip and cutting edge. And they're like, oh man, like I love the idea, but I just don't like the vibe of being associated. Like, is there that stigma? Have you come up against that yet? Or because the platform is just rooted in so much good, people are like, man, I don't care like who you're associated with because what we're doing is badass. So I'm in.
Yeah. It's funny. Over the years, like we've had so many different kind of tangents of this conversation. And like, once we land a chain restaurant of a scale, will this backfire? Will this be hurtful for our brand kind of thing? And we've talked about it so much, but I think one thing that's done us well all the time is we usually talk about our vision when we sit down with a restaurant owner. And we basically say like, our vision with Mealshare is I would like to be old and gray, sitting in my rocking chair and talking to my grandkids and telling them when I was younger, youth hunger used to be this massive problem in Canada. Like there's a lot of kids that were going hungry that didn't have breakfast in their backpacks or lunch in their backpacks about like nothing. And I want that to just be so unimaginable for them because that's not their reality, that we've taken care of that. And we know that this is the first generation where that actually can happen. That can be a vision that we create for ourselves. And so we invite, I think, our restaurants in to be like, we want to get here. It's a very ambitious goal, but we think we can be a part of this solution that we know can exist for our country. And you can be a part of it too. And in order for us to get there, we need a lot of people in on this. We need a lot, like the majority of restaurants in Canada to be like, oh yeah, like that Mealshare program, it's so easy. Why wouldn't I do it? Let's just do it. I want to be part of this solution, this alliance of restaurants. And so I think like we did a really good job of like trying to explain that like we want everyone to be on Mealshare eventually because that's going to be the change that we need to see, essentially. And so when we talked about this, like this different idea of like, oh, will independents think we're cool anymore? Or will some be like, oh, they've sold out, they're working with A&W? We don't think so. Like we've talked about it and like we've chatted. We have great restaurant relationships with a lot of our restaurant partners. We have city committees of restaurant owners. And when we ask them those questions, people are like, no, like don't worry about that. Like you guys are doing such a good thing. Like we realize that you need a lot of support from a lot of different people. And a lot of them say like, we love A&W. So like, yeah, it was always quite positive. But who knows? People love to hate. Hate is going to hate. And you just got to accept that, we're on a mission.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that's true. I think you, if you don't have any people to borrow your term, like hating on what you're doing, you're not being loud enough. And, I think that's a great mindset, and just the way you were communicating that to me. And I'm not sure if you're on like every pitch call, but you feel that passion and you feel that like, hey guys, it's not even about that. It's not about our partners. It isn't. It's about the end goal. So let's focus on that first and foremost. And I think that's the key for me in regards to like a takeaway. If I'm a listener of this and I own, say, a cafe or a restaurant, wherever it is, it's like, yeah, you know what? It's all about just that $1 impacting, that family, that individual in need. So everything else is really irrelevant at that point.
Yeah. And I think it's funny chatting with restaurateurs because once we go in and sit down with them and explain the program, we almost always have a restaurant sign up because Mealshare makes makes obvious social sense, I think, but I don't think people realize how much business sense. We really tried to focus on making sure that our program provides real value because we know that these are small businesses. They need it to make value. If they're going to devote time towards it, time is money. We realize that. And so there's all different aspects I could get into of like the value behind it. But yeah, I think that's really, really important to one, explain the value to them, but then to also explain like, this is where we're going. Like, this is what we're trying to do. And I think people appreciate that we have the foresight. Like, it's not like, hey, we're trying to do some good. And it's just like, we don't understand the bigger issue or where we're trying to go. It's like, we know what we're trying to do here. And like, we want your help. We want you to come along for this journey.
That's so cool. I know this is like, you just kind of crushed such a massive mountain, but what's next for Mealshare?
Yeah. We are a charity that is solely supported by the restaurant industry. So as you can imagine, 2020 was an extremely hard year for us. We had to lay off our whole team of 17, including ourselves. But one thing I'm supremely proud of is that every single one of our team members kept working as a volunteer to keep Mealshare afloat, to keep doing what we do.
Whoa.
And I think that I'm just so proud of that. So this year was extremely tough. And I honestly didn't know that if I would still be working at Mealshare right now, 5 months ago. No idea. Very, very concerning. But again, just to speak to A&W, we told them, like, we've been talking with you for a while. We know you're interested. We know you want to move forward with a program like what we've discussed. But just so you know, like, we're not doing very good. So if you do want to move forward, we should like really talk about this right away. And they were amazing. They're like, you know what, like, our communities, we didn't have a great year ourselves either, but our communities need this now more than ever. So if we're going to do it, we should do it now. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's go. So yes, like, we just climbed a huge mountain, but like, you have to realize, like, we were just in like the depths of hell for a while there. So like, we're just trying to like sit with how like grateful we are and how excited we are. Like, we've been working towards this for 8 years to get to this level. And so what we'd like to do moving forward is we want to make sure that we're continually providing an amazing program to both A&W and all of our independent restaurant partners, and also start creating new aspects and partnerships. Before, we were so laser focused on the hospitality industry. We would have people from like consumer packaged goods be like, hey, like, have you ever thought of making my bag of flour a Mealshare item? Or all these different things. And so we're like, we do, like, Andrew, one of our co-founders, is amazing at being like, is this a shiny object? Like, he's very good at being like, cool idea. Is this a shiny object? And I'm like the biggest magpie in the world. I'm like, shiny object.
Right.
Look at them all. This is great. So he's really, really great at being like a devil's advocate for me. And I think that's why we're such a good team. And so, but now we want to be controlled at doing that and looking at for these partnerships. We know that we want to become Canada's restaurant charity. And we know in order to do that, we want to start looking at some different partnerships to educate more people around Mealshare. You know, there's still a lot of people that when I explain what I do, they're like, that is so cool. How have I never heard of this? And I'm like, yeah, it's a small charity, you know, we don't have commercial time or anything like that. It's like mostly our restaurants that like introduce the program to other people for us. So yeah, we want to get a bit of a steady state on where we are, make sure that we're providing an amazing service, but also looking at these different industries like CPGs, consumer packaged goods. We're talking with a couple of delivery companies right now, which is some really exciting conversations. So yeah, I'm really excited for the next year because I think there's a lot of growth that is still out there and a lot of impact that can still happen.
Yeah, as you're talking and just now, I'm just in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, has he talked to this person? Oh, has he talked to this person? Oh, I should introduce him to this person. Like I'm sure you've talked to almost everyone, especially in the local market, but I would really love to, if I can play any role in forging any relationships, I would absolutely love, because there's just like great people that are so socially conscious. Go ahead.
Huge shout out to one of my mentors, Praveen Varshney. He was the individual, was the catalyst behind A&W. You know, like one of the best things that we did, and this is one of the best pieces of advice I can give to any entrepreneur, is like, make sure you have mentors. If you do not have mentors, that should be your next goal for the next quarter. 100%, no ifs, and or buts. That has been the single most impactful thing for our organization. Is Jeremy, myself, and Andrew set a goal, I think it was in 2015, that like by the next 6 months, we wanted to have at least 2 mentors each. And that goal, and just getting support, you know, just asking for help and just saying, this is what we're doing. Do you want to be a part of this? And people being like, yes, this is great. And Praveen has always just been like such a massive supporter of mine and of Mealshare's. And I remember talking to him one time and he's like, okay, what's on the agenda? What can we talk about? And I was just like, well, we're trying to reach out to change. And he's like, oh, I play golf with so-and-so over at A&W. Like, let's just connect you. I was like, great. And like, that would have been such a hard conversation for me to have alone. So it's those like warm introductions that just like, they're game changers. They're absolute game changers.
Yeah. For me, as a guy who didn't finish school, didn't finish my university degree, I left after 3 years. I really was not a great student. And as important as education is, and I will constantly tell everyone that like go to school and study and do all those things. I'm so convinced that if you really want to make an impact on the world, it's like how deeply connected can you get with other human beings, and through those connections, watch what you can do. Because I don't know if, you know, Y equals MX plus B helped me at all with, you know, donating nearly $30,000 to local charities in BC. It didn't at all. It was all through relationships and opportunities that those relationships provided. And to your point, mentorships, coach, whatever you want to call them, especially if you're an entrepreneur, like, do not go at this alone, because 1, you're a fool if you do. And 2, there are so many people out there that are so willing and able to, whether you're paying them or you're not, they're so willing and able to share. And there's a quote, that I'll paraphrase. It's something,
an African proverb.
Yeah, something like that. It's
if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
That's a good one. But no, this one is this one is a smart man learns from his mistakes. A brilliant man learns from the mistakes of others. And I feel like that's what having a mentor is like, I would be so open to mentoring someone on the come up when it comes to like consulting or like launching a podcast or how to market your business or how to write a book, all those things, because, oh my God, have I stumbled along the way. And I would love to say like, I turned left here, but you definitely need to go right, because left is just a big waste of time.
Yeah, that's about a year and a half waste of time right there. You want to go left.
Yeah, exactly. Can we change speeds a bit and just talk about let's talk about books. something that you and I share in
My
common.
man.
And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. And
Congratulations.
I will say that your book is. I've only obviously seen a bit of it, what you shared on social media,
Yeah.
but it's so pretty, and I'm having like book envy about the layout of your book and how it looks. But
Shout out to Nick Pond. Nick did
okay,
a great job. Great
shout out
designer.
Nick.
Amazing guy.
So yeah, let the listeners know what it is, how they can get it, and why you did it.
Yeah. Elysium Retreat is what Brad is talking about. But going back to mentorship, I had a meeting with one of my other mentors, Mike Tan, amazing individual that helped start Change Heroes a couple years ago. Great dude. And I remember asking him, I think it was in like 2015. We sat down, had a great lunch, just caught up. I just asked him, so what do you got planned for the weekend? We were just wrapping up our lunch. And he's like, oh, I'm doing my annual retreat this weekend. And I was like, annual retreat, what's that? And he's like, oh, well, like every year I'll just like book a small little cabin, like super rustic, very inexpensive, in the middle of nowhere, usually on like an island or in the forest, and just go away. And I'll go away for 2 days, and I'll just bring a notebook, and I'll journal, and I'll think about what I want to accomplish for the year. I'll think about what I did this last year, and it's just like a review of my last year and moving forward. It's a formal review, essentially. And I was like, huh, very cool. And he's like, yeah, like think about it. Like the best companies in the world, they review their employees every quarter, if not every 6 months. Like when was the last time you reviewed your best employee, yourself? And when he said that, like just an explosion in my soul happened. And I was just like, I have never done that. And that is supremely intelligent. I'm going to do that. So I think it was like 2 months later, I went back to Victoria. My parents live in East Duke in Victoria on some land. And we had like a little storage cabin down by the water. And there was like, it was literally just like, my dad's a bit of a hoarder, just like his stuff, old printers, cartridges, all down there, some couches and stuff. And so I just like spent the afternoon just grabbing everything and just like moving it outside. Luckily it wasn't raining, and just grabbed some food, some beer, and just like, don't talk to me. I'm going in here for 2 days. And I can honestly say those 2 days were the most impactful 2 days I have ever had out of any course, education, anything. I just got so much out of those 2 days that I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this every year, if not every 6 months. This was amazing. The stuff I got out of it was just fantastic. And so fast forward a couple of years later, I would start doing it every year. And I had a couple of friends and colleagues that would be like, oh, like this retreat idea is really cool. Like, can you send me what you use? And so I was like, yeah, sure. And so every year I'd add more stuff to it. By reading, I'd find exercises. By going to courses, I'd find exercises. And I just added into like my personal retreat package. And so I started sharing it with some friends, and they're like, this is awesome. Like, I got so much out of this. I had friends like quitting their jobs, leaving spouses, like all positive stuff to move forward in their life.
Right.
And I was like, that's great. That's so cool. And I think my next retreat, one of the questions in there that I answer every year is, what are resources that you don't particularly own, but that you have access to that you can utilize? And that question right away, just like this cabin, this experience, like this whole experience, I should offer this to more people, 100%. And so, yeah, I started doing that with some other colleagues and started kind of beta testing like the package and like putting it together. So it wasn't just for me, but it was to be shared. And I called it Elysium Retreat. Elysium because it's an old Greek word that kind of means like, a lot of people know the word Valhalla because of Vikings, but it's kind of like a Valhalla place. It's like a heaven that the heroic brave, when you live a life full of meaning and honor, you go to this Elysium, this perfect life that you live on for the rest of your life. That's your heaven. And I thought, like, isn't that cool? Like, if it's the work that we do on ourselves, our inner work, that allows us for us to live the best life we can. And so that's why I called it Elysium Retreat. And this last year is the first time I launched it. I had this, like, in my last year retreat, I had this like mind shift of like, I never thought I was starting a business. I know Elysium was this fun little thing that I would like sell to like some friends and colleagues, but I never had like, I am starting a business. I always worked on Mealshare. Mealshare gives me a lot of things to do. And so I had this like kind of like mindset change during COVID of like, Donald Miller is one of my favorite authors. He wrote A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. If you've never read that book, you 100% should. And he posed a question on his Instagram during COVID, and he was just like, in 20 years, when you look back at this time, what do you want to be so grateful for that you did, that you achieved, that you were able to spend time on when you look back? I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. And right away, I was just like, I want to start a business for Elysium. It's going to be a business. I'm going to scale it, and I'm going to impact millions of people. And so like that, like mindset change was like very important for me. And that's what I launched in December this last year. So I actually have one of my books right here.
Yes.
This is Elysuim Retreat.
Beautiful.
And it is everything you need to conduct your own annual personal development retreat.
And how do people get it?
You can go to elysium.ca, elysiumretreat.ca, and that's got all the information. Essentially, we send you, again, this is a certain type of retreat. I think a lot of people right away, they'll ask, okay, can you send me the PDF? Like, I want to do it this weekend. Like, let's go. I had a lot of entrepreneur friends that were doing this. And I was like, I'm not sending you the PDF. I do not want to send you the PDF because the whole purpose of this weekend is completely disconnect. Like no phones, no internet, no screens. You're going to get a hard copy of the book and you're going to work through the book. And that is what you're going to sit with yourself and answer these big questions. I'm going to give you, my gift to you is I'm going to give you that time to answer these questions you probably never actually taken the time to actually like focus on. And so, that's Elysium.
So they can get it through elysiumretreats.ca, but they need to have some patience. It's not coming tomorrow.
It ships within a week. So
Okay.
yeah, if you want to do your retreat in like a week and a half, that's what I say. Try and have it order before a week and a half, because essentially what I send you is I send you the pre-retreat guide, which is a PDF that you can read that kind of like gives you a ton of information on how this retreat is going to go, and puts you in a mindset for success. So I give you some suggestions on like what you need to do to get the most out of this experience. You don't have to listen to me. You can order the book and do your own thing. And well, one of the things I suggest is like, don't do this at home. Don't do this at your office. You need to go to a new space that is completely new to yourself and like completely disconnect. I can guarantee you'll have a way better retreat. I've chatted with so many friends that have just like, oh yeah, I was just really busy. So I like did it at home, and like just diving through the retreat in different aspects and parts where people get a lot out of, they missed a lot of things. So yeah, the pre-retreat guide I think is very, very helpful to figure out how you want to conduct your retreat. So read through that. Then you'll get the book in the mail about a week and a half later. You'll go through the book. And then lastly, we have a review. And so I've got a couple things that took me about 5 years to figure out to get the most of my retreats that I like pass on some knowledge, and I go through a few things that I find really helpful for clients. And the thing I'm really excited about is this book. Again, like I really wanted to have an impact with Elysium Retreat. And so every package sold in turn provides all the education materials needed for a young girl in sub-Saharan Africa. So you're not only supporting your education, but you're enabling a young girl to have an education herself, which I thought was amazing. I'm really excited about that.
Dude, I would love to chat with you more offline just about like the logistics side of the book authoring space, because it's just making my mind hurt a lot lately. So I'd love to chat with you if you're open to it. I'd be
happy to. I'm no expert by any chance, but
two heads are better than one.
100%.
What inspires you?
Yeah, a lot of different stuff. Like I said, like I was really lucky growing up. There are a couple experiences that had like a really profound impact on me. First one, I went to Mexico in grade 10, and I saw like unforgettable poverty at like a very hard-hitting graphic level. And since then, I was like always like, I have to do something, like there's so many people experiencing this, and I'm so lucky because like the problems I have, they would literally kill for. So like that's amazing. That was a big one. And then my brother passed away in about 2.5 years ago out of nowhere. He was 30 years old. And that was a big one. He would love to be around to have my problems as well. And so that is like rocket fuel for me. Whenever I start like thinking like, man, this is tough. This is really hard. I think, is it? Is it? that hard. And then I almost passed away, and I was in a flight coming back from Seattle with my best friend Alex, back into Victoria, and we did a crash landing. Our engine stalled, and so like we went down, and yeah, I thought I was going to die. So near-death experience, that'll make you really, really grateful. So there's been a couple like these. I'd say those are like my three moments that has made me just like insanely grateful and appreciative of what I have, and like really, I try to instill it in the book with some thought-provoking questions, but make you think like, if you have one more month, one more week, one more year, are you living it? I want to squeeze every last drop out of life, because I know it could be gone.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And because I know that's obviously not easy to talk about. Maybe it's part of the whole cathartic process with, especially dealing with your brother's passing. But I find that's so true for so many of us in society, especially here in North America, where we will lose something so near and dear to us, or someone becomes ill and it's fatal, or someone we know was in a plane crash and almost dies. And we have this moment. For some of us, it's brief. For some of us, a little bit longer. But it really does. It shakes us, and it shakes us to, really understand how precious life is and how it isn't given. And for me, it makes me think of like the Stoics and how, or even like samurai warriors, how they would literally meditate on their death. They understood it fundamentally, like, I am going to die, and they were okay with that. And that was not, it wasn't a dark thing. It was actually a beautiful thing. It was like a freeing thing. So how do you, in moments when you're walking away from being in a plane crash, which I would love to hear more about sometime if you're open to it, but you're walking away from that, and it's very visceral, it's still palpable, but now it's years later, or it's weeks later or months. How do we as human beings stay in touch with those really moving pieces that show us that life isn't given? Like, life is fragile, and literally the fact that we're doing this is a gift, because guess what? In 90 minutes from now, you and I could have completely different realities. So how do you stay attached to reality? Like one of my favorite authors says, Robert Greene, he says, we need to be attached to reality like a spider to its web. So how do you do that?
A couple different things. I think what you're talking about, negative visualization, is like a really nice practice to get into, like really sitting with a really tough experience that could potentially happen to you. Like, what if you take 15 minutes and you write or just meditate on both of your parents dying tomorrow? What happens next? I can guarantee you, after you've done that process, you're going to really want to talk to your parents and just really appreciate the time that you can now spend with them, because, hey, that didn't happen, or it hasn't happened yet. Also, I think what it does is it makes you stronger for what if and when bad things do happen. You've put yourself in that position, like you've thought about it. So it's not going to blindside you as much, I would say. And so having practices where I think you recall certain experiences and try to find the most out of them. A lot of my friends say, like, I'm an extremely grateful person, and I'd have to agree with that. Like, I spend a lot of time on gratitude, and I think it's like one of the key fundamentals of having like a fulfilling and happy life. One of the things I like try to focus on and hear and explain to people is, a lot of people spend so much time, I think, around the wrong things when they set intentions or goal setting. And like one of my, I think, pieces of secret sauce is the review process. How do you build in a really good review process so that your goal isn't just a dream that you forgot about because you wrote it on a piece of paper? I think having a good review process for remembering the lessons you've learned, the things that make you who you are, your values, and I set that up for individuals for this as a takeaway, something to post in their room that they can run through as kind of like a game plan moving forward. If they run through that, that'll be like a nice reminder of the things that are really important to them, their values, what they're trying to accomplish, where they've come from. So yeah, I'd say it's a mix of different things.
Yeah, but it's so key, isn't it? Like through a review process or whatever, whether it's meditation or conversation or community, it's like really understanding that like I said, this is fragile. And I think we do understand that when we are faced with those moments of, again, someone getting ill or someone passing away or getting in a car accident and almost, you know, it being fatal. And for a brief moment, we are truly in touch with the fragility of life, but then we kind of just go back to normal, and then it's, you know, social
Yeah.
media and dinner and running around and kids and
Yeah.
girlfriends, and
Yeah.
it's so
So working
easy.
in your life than rather working on your life.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I think if you take that time to build in little reminders, whether it's your meditation practice in the morning, mindfulness practice in the morning, to kind of like set you up for a really good day. One thing I did when I came back to stay with my parents on a trip in the summer last year, to stay with them for a month. And one thing I did every morning is I thought to myself, this could be my last day with my parents. And that was a beautiful gift I gave myself, because like the conversations I had with them, I was so present. And I was just like, man, I just love this relationship I have with my parents. This is great. And so like little things like that, they don't need to take a long time. Little things to like just get you in that mindset to get the most out of life, I think is important.
Is your like power circle, is yours, that's what I call my, like my crew, is your social circle?
Power circle.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, that's good.
Is
That's
your
strong.
is your
My man.
and you're now in that power circle, dude. You're part of the
Oh
power circle,
man.
so welcome to it. Do
I'm
you
You just made my week.
do you find, like, if you do that mindfulness practice, you're sitting with that idea that this could be the last you know, breakfast you share with your parents, do you sit down at the table and they're like, are they like, do they sense it? Are they like, oh, Derek's on one of his things again? Or they're just like, they
I
know you, or they just like, understand it? Or are they kind of like, bro, like, what? Ease up on the love a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not one of those individuals that you like hug and that like hug you for a little bit too long. I'm not. So I don't think that they always like see it. But sometimes I'll just be like, I love you guys. And they'll be like, where's that from? I'm like, oh, I was just thinking like how lucky I am. And they're like, oh, that's nice. So like, that's like a Derek moment. That's a classic Derek moment. So yeah, I don't think it comes out all the time, but every once in a while it'll seep in there.
And does it show up with your friends as well? So if we can use my term, like your power circle, you're like, hey guys, like, and you know, I had this conversation the other night with a client, and I'd love to get your take on this, especially as white privileged men who for so long we have been programmed, I think more for our parents, perhaps. I think you and I are similar ages. I'm 38. Um, they have been programmed, the men in our lives, to really only feel things like glad, mad, and sad, kind of like a Dr. Seuss, if you will. And now we're learning that it's okay to feel, it's okay to have emotions. And I was having this conversation the other day with one of my clients who's in Australia. Shout out Chris. He was talking about, I was asking him who his five were, who his power circle was, who his five most influential people that he keeps. And he mentioned two men, two of his buddies that he hangs out with. And he said some of the sweetest, most endearing, most kind things about these men that I don't know. And after he was done speaking, I said, have you ever said that to those people? And he said, no, I haven't. And I said, how would you feel if I called you up and I said, hey, Chris, just so you know, man, like, you inspire me, dude. And you treat my wife with so much respect, and that means so much to me. And we consider you part of our family. And you know what, man, I love you.
Yeah.
How would that make you feel? And he's like, oh, that would make me feel amazing. I'm like,
Yeah.
you should be doing that. We should
You
be
should
doing
do
those
that
things collectively and being so
100%.
open and sharing. So does that come up for you? Like, are you that kind of friend? Are you that kind of power circle
Yeah.
member?
Yes. There's a couple in Elysium Retreat. You're challenged. There are challenges that I'm challenge you to do something, and that is one of the challenges. You're supposed to list basically who's someone that has positively impacted you and why. And it gives you a long list for you to do that. And then it's like, challenge. Tell each of them that as soon as you're done your retreat. Call them. Do not text them. Call them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that kind of thing, it's funny, like I'll call my friends and do that every year, and they'll be like, just did your retreat, hey? Cool. Because it's such a nice prompt that like I don't always think to do it. And it's like, if you really want to get meaningful and do it really well, I think you need to have some time to devote what you want to say. And so that's where the retreat comes in. But yeah, like I have this rule that just tell them, it's just one of these things, like when you have like that concern that you're not wanting to talk about something because it might make you feel like a bit too soft, or it might make you look a bit too soft. It's like, doesn't matter. Just tell them, And I think that's one thing that this next generation, like our generation of men, are starting to learn that maybe our fathers didn't have, which is like, it is completely okay. Like I got talking about like my brother there, like after he passed, I was able to unlock this like whole new range of emotion. Like I am so much more emotional after going through that experience of like deep loss and sorrow. And so like I get emotional sometimes talking about him. Sometimes I'm completely fine. And I'm okay with that. I think that's really important, that you should be okay with feeling those emotions. Like that is nothing to be ashamed of, like you are tapping into emotion. Emotion is one of the most beautiful things about life. Like why would you not let yourself do that, So yeah, I think it's something really important. And if you're listening and you haven't done that, like think about the people in your panel circle and tell them, because if that's the only thing you get from this podcast, that would be like a beautiful gift you give yourself in your relationship with that person.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of challenges, quickly before I let you go, because I understand that your time is valuable. I don't want to keep you too long, but this came up in my very last podcast last week with my good friend Cam McDougall, who's doing a lot of great work in the personal growth realm
Cam,
of things.
I love Cam.
Yeah, Cam's dope. We were talking about the Tim Ferriss coffee challenge. Have you heard about this? Where you because he's challenging you to get uncomfortable with being get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and the challenge is to go into your favorite coffee shop, obviously pre-COVID. I'm sure you could do it now too. Order your coffee, and as you wait for your coffee, you lay down on the ground.
Yeah, that's from 4 Hour Work Week, if I remember right. Yeah, that's
exactly.
That's a great challenge.
Yeah, and
if you want something a little less maybe daring, I always talk about the elevator challenge, which is like so many people are so weird about elevators, like getting confined, and you only got 30 seconds, you can't have a long conversation, and so people just like don't talk, and it's awkward. Like you can say it's not, but it's always fucking awkward. So I say every time I'm in an elevator, I'm going to be talking to like the person. You have to, and it's like you have to do it. Just have to. And I think that is a nice entry into that. I like the lying on the floor. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Yeah, and there's the elevator one reminds me of I think there's always alignments. I always find like 6 degrees of separation in life with Seinfeld. I don't know if you're a Seinfeld guy, but there's the elevator scene where Jerry is in the elevator with this obviously a beautiful woman, and he just turns to her and says, "You may not be able to tell by looking at me, but I can run really fast." And that, and now having spent the last 57 minutes and 26, 27, 28 seconds with you, I could picture you saying that to someone. Hey, you may not be able to tell by looking at me, but I can run really fast.
I just want you to know.
I want to say thank you so much for spending the last hour with me, and I want to say thank you so much for being so open to coming on the show and sharing just a snippet of who you are. And I feel like we could have done, and we can do, probably 2 or 3 more rounds of this to really get into your why and like what really makes you tick. So I want to say thank you so much for your time. As I say to everyone that comes on this show, I believe that time is the most valuable thing that we have. So thank you so much for sharing yours with me and the listeners. And I also want to say a massive shout out to you and the rest of the team. And I'll just say this, because I'm sure you would say it if I didn't. Yes, Derek is doing amazing things, but it isn't just Derek, and it's not just A&W. There's a whole team of people across the country now that are really making what Mealshare has kind of visioned into a reality. So I just want to take a moment to applaud all of you that have brought what was once a vision into reality. And I will fly the Mealshare flag as high and as proud as I possibly can. If I can help you in any way, please let me know. I'm just super excited for you, man. I think it's such a great thing that you're doing. And honestly, in the background, if I can help at all with any contacts, or if I can be like an annoying sales guy for you and introduce the product to some people, I'd be more than happy to do that. But before I let you go,
a lot of people are going to learn about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Again, just thank you for bringing me on. And like I said to you before, I think we started recording. There's no one in BC that likes the sound of their own voice more than myself. So I just had a blast. Thanks for having me.
No, and thank you so much. before I do let you go officially, if people do want to reach out and they do want to get in touch, let's just go through Elysium Retreat. What's the best way to reach out there? The website, I'm assuming, or
Yeah,
Instagram?
elysiumretreat.ca
Okay.
is great. Instagram, we also have an Instagram account. Follow us.
Yeah, and then if people want to engage more with Mealshare or understand more about what it is and the partners in their local communities, how best they engage with that.
Yeah, mealshare.ca is probably the easiest. There's like find a restaurant near you and a beautiful map that geographically knows where you are. Not that creepy, don't worry. And shows you all the restaurants around you are, which is really, really cool. And then we got a lot of information about youth hunger, what we're trying to do, and how to get in touch with us. So yeah, that's probably the best way.
Yeah,
And on
so
social media too, we're there.
awesome. I encourage you guys, if you're listening to this, well, obviously you are because you're here and you're listening to this, but I encourage you guys, once you're done, call to action. Like, go on your phone or go on your laptop and just digest a bit of what Mealshare is and find that restaurant locally. If it's A&W, do the A&W thing. And I mean, that's so easy and so accessible, and it's a great way to have some great social impact. So I encourage you guys.
One thing I would love to mention
Yeah,
that I
go.
realized I forgot to say is that there's two ways people can get involved at A&W now. So we've got
Yes,
Mealshare
go.
Mondays, which is actually the way in which they have their Mealshare branded menu item, which is the cheddar bacon Uncle Burger combo. So if you go in on Monday, you order that, you know that that's their Mealshare item. You're providing a meal, you're getting a meal, easy peasy. The second way is something I'm so proud of. I'm so excited about it. It's called Make It a Mealshare. So you can order anything at any A&W, a coffee, onion rings, 12, 14 burgers, whatever you want. And then you can just tell the cashier, can you make it a Mealshare? And they'll add $1 to the end of your bill as the donation to provide that other meal. So it's just anyone can access it, which is great, and participate.
Yeah. So shout out to you and your team, and shout out to A&W and the Uncle Burger and all the burgers and the onion rings and everything. That's so awesome. So congratulations, Mealshare team. Congratulations, Derek. Thank you again for your time, dude. Is there anything final? I feel like you have so much knowledge and energy. Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners? You've got, I'd say, a couple thousand years at least right now listening to you. What do you want to say?
I would say what we talked about is like our challenge to you today is if you listen to this podcast, think about the people that have impacted your life in the last year, write them out, that positively impacted your life, why they've written them out, and you're going to cheat. Don't cheat, because you know what you have to do after this. You have to tell them. Like, go and tell them. Like, I guarantee you that will make their year, their month. Like, go and tell them. It's a beautiful gift you'll give yourself and to them.
Yeah, I love it. Great spot to close it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I truly appreciate you all. If it wasn't for you, this show wouldn't exist. Maybe it would exist, but it would just be Derek and I sitting here talking to each other, which we could just do on FaceTime.
Which also sounds fun.
Which sounds great as well. But thank you guys so much. It means so much to me that you guys come along for the ride. I really do appreciate it. That is Derek. I am Brad. This is the Brad Bodnerchuk podcast. I appreciate you guys so much. You know what to do. Until next time, be good and do good. That's it, dude. We did it.
Woo!
That was awesome, man. You smoked that.
I was scared that I had too many like windows open because it's